Today's classic interview is with an individual who went by the name Jackie Keaton when we interviewed him, and it relates to net neutrality. This was an interview with a former Time Warner Cable representative. You know how cable companies, internet companies are known for like the worst customer service? I think it's car dealerships, ISPs, and airlines or something that are always some of the worst rated in terms of customer service. Well, we interviewed a former Time Warner Cable rep who told us about all of the tactics that they would use to continually raise your bill rather than lower it. And it's an interview that relates to net neutrality, not insofar as customer service reps actually connect to internet freedom, but whenever we hear these ISPs tell us we would never do anything to just try to get more money out of everybody, like creating internet slow lanes and fast lanes. You need only look at their sales and retention practices as outlined to us by Jackie Keaton back in October of 2014 to realize the second that these companies are allowed to do internet fast lanes and slow lanes, they are going to do them. Let's check out my interview with Jackie Keaton. I'm joined today by a former Time Warner Cable retention agent. We have agreed that he will go by the name Jackie Keaton. Of course, protecting his identity is important to both Jackie and to us. So Jackie, really great to talk to you. Let's start at the very beginning. When you say a retentions agent, what does that mean? People are probably used to calling Time Warner or Comcast when they have the very common problems people seem to have with their bills and service. What is retention?
Retention is actually a team that's put in place to ensure that you don't disconnect your services or that you don't downgrade your services. If you want to leave the company before you can even start to get that rolling, you have to deal with retention.
And this is pretty common. I mean, in my experience, when I talk to my cell phone provider or even a credit card that I want to cancel, rarely is whoever you initially talk to actually empowered to cancel that account. And in my experience, and tell me if this is good or bad advice, when I'm calling specifically because of a problem with my bill or I want to negotiate a better rate, I go directly to retentions, whether that's by saying to the phone tree that I want to cancel my account or just finding the retentions number. Is this a good strategy? In other words, are consumers going to save themselves some time by going directly to a retentions agent?
Well, it is true that there are deals that are offered by retention that aren't offered by any other departments. It isn't necessarily true that you'll get to retention if you say you're going to disconnect.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll go through the process with Time Warner. So when you got a call, at what point in the process were those customers? Had they already spoken to a regular customer service agent and had indicated they want to cancel?
Almost always. These people have been on the line for sometimes upwards of 2 hours.
Okay, so you get someone, your phone rings, you take the call, maybe they've been on the phone for 2 hours. Are you able to see how long total the person has been on the phone? You know, sometimes you get transferred around 5, 6, 7 times. Do you know what the transfer history and total call length has been?
Absolutely not. A lot of the time, another agent will just put them on hold and say they'll be right back and they'll be transferred to you. So when you greet them, they're like, what? I was just talking to someone else.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the training process. When you were brought in, what were you told was ultimately the goal of what your job was there to do, what was there to accomplish? Were you there to help people sort out their bills? Were you there simply to prevent people from canceling at all costs? How was your position described?
The position is described as you're put in place to help the customer realize the value of their product so they won't cancel.
Gotcha. And what tools and techniques were the ones that you were told you should be using to prevent people from canceling?
De-escalation mainly. These people are usually pretty upset when they get through to us. It's de-escalation, restating the value, offering more services for a shorter amount of time for a lower rate.
Okay. And was there ever really a specific situation where you were told, listen, if someone calls with this scenario, you don't have to try to upsell them or retain them. If someone calls because they're the person who had the account died, for example, do you just say, okay, we'll disconnect for you?
If they're actually dead, they have to take a death certificate in to the local payment center, so we can't actually do that over the line. If they're sick or something, though, you can absolutely upsell.
And was that what you were told to do? So if someone calls in and they say, my husband's just really ill, and either for financial or other reasons, we just don't really want or need this anymore. You were still told in that case, offer them more expensive stuff.
Right.
And how does that work? Tell us a little bit about that.
You'd say, you first empathize. Say, I can understand how that would be hard. Listen, is he going to be laid up for a while? What kind of things does he like to watch on TV? Maybe we can add this NBA sports pass or something like that.
And were there, what would you say was the, well, I'll ask it two ways. What was your success rate in terms of the calls you got in getting people to ultimately not cancel? And was there an expected or target success rate that was established? In other words, what were the metrics that were put in place?
The metrics are put in place for how much money you're actually saving. A lot of the time, you can actually get a pay raise by saving the company money by preventing these people from disconnecting. But if you were to slip below that rating, you'd actually just go back to your initial flat pay rate. My actual rate of save, I'm not sure what I'd say. Probably, it was pretty high, maybe like 70%.
So in other words, that means that of every 10 calls, you could save 70%, or 7 of those people, you could prevent them from canceling.
Right, because a lot of people, they do call in because they're frustrated about prices. If you can work with them, a lot of the time they do stay with the company, just if you're willing to work with them.
What was the turnover rate? In other words, the people that worked in this retention department, was it a position in which people would stay for a while? Were people just constantly coming in and out, and why were they leaving?
Constantly in and out. Everyone was leaving just because of the actual environment. It's really hard for people to stay positive in a place where everyone is so negative that you're talking to on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem to me that it would just become not only an incredibly repetitive situation, but also you're like you said, you're dealing with people who are angry all the time. I imagine that gets to you.
It absolutely did, yeah.
So I've been having, as I've talked about on the program, an issue with Time Warner here in New York City, where I think it's been 17 phone calls just trying to get the price and package that I was initially promised 13 months ago when I moved to New York City. It's almost become kind of like a game where I just wonder, what are they going to tell me next? And every time I'll reference the story up until that point to kind of get us both on, on kind of equal footing. Is there any accountability? Like, does anyone care what anyone else has said to me?
No, no. I'm sorry. The promises that are made, well, we were supposed to never throw anyone under the bus, never say, no, they lied to you. What we're supposed to say is, let me look into that. And I don't think that's something we can actually do, but let me see what I can do for you.
I've heard that many, many times. So, and ultimately, oftentimes I'll be told, okay, listen, David, we've got this sorted out. I apologize for the trouble you've had. What we set up is that your next bill will be this amount, and that's what it will be for the next 9 months. And then I get my next bill, and it's $30 more. In those cases, was the last agent I spoke to, were they just straight up lying to me to get me off of the phone? Did they believe that they had put in place the price I was given, and through some other mechanism it didn't happen? Or what exactly is going on behind the scenes there?
It's funny you should ask that way, because it could be that they didn't do it because there's no accountability. It could be that they tried to do it, but the software wouldn't let it go through. Or it could be that they tried to save you money, but the company actually wouldn't approve the credit.
So sometimes somebody might actually put in and say, we are going to give this customer this credit. And then at some point after we get off the phone, but before my next bill comes in, someone who's higher up than the phone agent said, oh, no, we're not going to be doing this.
Exactly.
And then they're under no obligation, or at least decide they're not even going to communicate that to the customer, I would guess.
No, and they don't tell the agents either. So we have no idea.
That's just incredible. Hey, last thing I want to ask you about. You talked a little bit about how, depending on how many of these accounts that people want to cancel, how many of them you're saving, that there's kind of like a variable pay or bonus structure. So how does that work? Is that a significant proportion of someone's base salary? In other words, can your salary really change drastically based on how many people you're convincing not to cancel?
Absolutely not. No, at most it's a $2 thing, and that goes by every 2 weeks, depending on how well you're doing. It's nothing that you could strive for, if you know what I mean.
Understood. Okay, and then how about as far as what tends to happen to everybody, which is you get one price for 6 months, and then it goes up, and then it goes up, and that entire kind of the billing creep that takes place. What's the best way to prevent that, or at least to counteract it?
It would be to keep in touch with them. One thing that is the reason that that's sort of justified in the company anyway is because you don't actually have a contract like these other companies. So you can call in and adjust rates. It's not, I mean, it's obviously not the best practice to
No.
keep changing the rates. I'm not trying to defend that, but you are able to negotiate with them.
All right, so it seems that it's almost like you just need to set a calendar reminder every 3 months. You should be calling up to negotiate.
I can't I can't say whether or not that's true.
All right, we've been speaking with Jackie Keaton, former Time Warner Cable retentions agent. Jackie, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, David.